I am not here to sell you anything. I am not here to promise you wealth, that you will get rich very quickly, or slowly, or that you will get rich. What I am here to say is that this is the seed of the only revolution, I believe, that deserves that name. The only sustainable, viable revolution, sustainable over time, and peaceful, above all, which is the one that aims at the separation of money and state. It is something that for many people sounds perhaps very ambitious. I believe it is possible, and I will also tell you how I believe it is possible to achieve it. But I am also going to tell you something that I have to tell you, that no idea in this world succeeds without the work, without the commitment of its bearers, of the people who carry those ideas in their heads. Many people say that the truth defends itself. That is not true. Reality perhaps does. It defends itself. There are rules that we do not decide. But the truth, that is, that relationship, that correspondence between our ideas and reality, that must be defended. And if we do not defend it, someone else will have to defend it at some point. Maybe years will pass, maybe centuries. But that person who rediscovers the truth will also have to defend it. There is no escape. I sometimes think about how many people, let's say, that had the bad fortune of living under the Aztec Empire. I say the Aztec Empire simply because it is one more example of a brutal empire. Perhaps it was not the most brutal. Excuse me if there is an Aztec in the audience. I mean, many of those people perhaps suspected at some point that the quality of the harvest did not necessarily depend on human sacrifices, on the work of the executioner, on those freshly torn out hearts, and those heads that rolled down the pyramids, but on something else. But they could not say it. If they did say it, they were instantly killed. Today, that is not our situation. What are we facing? We face at most certain inconveniences. That's all. It's nothing compared to what the vast majority of our ancestors suffered. We have to take advantage of this opportunity. We have to express ourselves without exposing ourselves to certain death. And it's not that we like going against the grain. Nobody likes going against the grain. It's something that hurts us. It's something very deep. Going with the social flow is something that is somehow engraved in our genes. But we also know what the problem is with going with the flow. We know the consequences, and let's say that those consequences scare us more, disgust us more, than we like comfort or perhaps status within certain communities or human groups. I am convinced that the love of truth and the love of freedom are the same thing. They are one and the same thing. And I am also convinced that this is measurable. And how is it measured? What is it that one is willing to sacrifice for that which one claims to value? And what we have to sacrifice is very little. Historically, it is very little. It is simply a bit of comfort, at least for the vast majority of us. Witnessing the hijacking of Bitcoin BTC while I was accused of, well, being a traitor, whatever, this kind of things, was depressing. Now, there is something that is much more depressing, being tortured and being burned alive for your convictions. We do not face that. We do face insults, censorship. They took down our channels on different platforms. But here we are. I am here safe and sound, saying the same things that were obvious to practically all the early adopters in the first years. And those of us who today are more interested in the truth than in comfort or in status do not live constantly threatened with death. That is progress. And some will say that it is not enough, or that it is not ideal, but it is progress. It is not depressing. We have to compare ourselves. I think being pioneers was quite easy for us. The life of a pioneer was never easy. Look at the example of Satoshi himself. Satoshi was completely ignored by practically all of his peers for years, and the guy kept going. He was not sponsored by MasterCard. He did not have any kind of push from venture capital, and he kept going. If you want to know why he was not sponsored by MasterCard or any venture capital, read the first paragraph of the white paper, the original technical document, and you will understand it perfectly. So the last thing I want is for us to identify ourselves as victims, that we adopt the role of victim, but that does not mean that we have not been victims. We do not identify ourselves, but we were, and some of us are too. I think it is not wrong to get angry about that. I think it is part of the solution. If one wants to close a conflict, not only this one, any conflict between human beings, one has to allow it. It is a way of recognizing what happened. And the one who tells you no, that it is wrong to express that anger, that it is something typical of bitter people, whiners, complainers, whatever, that person probably does not want you to talk because he doesn't want you to tell the truth. And the truth is that we were right about everything. Time proved us right. And time was not necessary, because logic proved us right. Then came the empirical evidence, which there are people who also deny. But they attacked us because there was a lot at stake. If you think about it, it was obvious that Bitcoin was going to be attacked. You have to be very naive to the monopoly on the issuance of currency is something. There is no monopoly more lucrative than this one. And therefore there is no monopoly that is going to be defended more fiercely than this one. So, why did we decide to stand up? And why, despite knowing that we were going to be attacked, did we put up with the attacks for so long? Well, because we don't want to put up with something much worse, which is a world with central bank digital currencies, with digital currencies completely monitored, controlled, programmable by them, not by us, and without even the escape valve of state cash, which is the last one left for the productive population. So, if you understand the catastrophic consequences of what I'm saying, you understand that strictly speaking it can be said that we did not make a sacrifice. The sacrifice would have been to give in. We stood firm. Many people think that to move in the right direction it is enough to simply live and let live. And many libertarians also think this, live and let live. They are wrong. If we do not move to defend our ideas, and if we do not put them into practice, we will all suffer, because those on the other side do move, and those who move win. This is so, whether we like it or not. It is a law of history. It is something that we can also learn from them. Why not? And on this subject, I am closing. I promised you that I would tell you how I think we can win. The answer is through exhaustion. Revolutionaries win through exhaustion. There comes a point when they are the only ones left standing. They are the only ones who have the conviction and the will. The conviction that they are right, obviously. The conviction that they have the tool or tools that are needed to win. And the will to use them. The will to act accordingly. And meanwhile, the others resign, and many ask themselves, what is wrong with these people? Why do they persist? Why are they still here? They cannot understand. There is an abyss. They cannot understand what is going on in these people's heads. But that does not matter. For better or worse, again, like it or not, those who win are those who are determined. Those who have the will to materialize a vision. These are the ones who change the course of history. It doesn't matter what discipline. They can be entrepreneurs, scientists, conquerors. It doesn't matter. That's the spirit. So, if you are convinced that the current institutions are the problem, you don't sit around waiting for the institutions to come to your rescue. You stand up and you help build other institutions, parallel institutions, because you know what depends on that. You know that the future can look very different if you act or not. That's why I want to call on you to get involved. This is not just any battle. This is, in my opinion, the battle of the millennium. I know it may sound like an exaggeration to many. I stand by that. But regardless of that discussion, one cannot participate in all the battles. One has to choose the one that one considers most important. And this for me is the most important. It is the one that can have the deepest and most lasting impact. The technical discussion is over. The theoretical discussion is over. Satoshi was right. Fundamentally, at least. He was not right about absolutely everything. No one is. Satoshi is not God. We don't need to be reminded of that. We are told that practically every day. But fundamentally, in the design of that system of incentives, he was right. We know that Bitcoin scales, and we know how it scales. But this, the creation of Satoshi Nakamoto, is not going to be of any use if it is not massively adopted peer-to-peer, without middlemen, without custodians. And this is our mission, to bring everywhere the closest thing we have to ideal money. Can it be an investment? Yes, but it cannot be just an investment. Bitcoin is essentially a tool of liberation. This is not a bet on a number in the roulette wheel, on a horse at the racetrack. This is a bet on humanity. We made the effort, and we continue to make the effort, to recover Bitcoin, on the one hand, because we know what awaits us if we do not do it, if we do not manage to separate currency from the state. But on the other hand, because we know what is possible if we do, all that potential to explore, if we manage in this way to prevent the tumorous growth of the state. If the price also goes up, if it goes to the moon, fantastic, we will all celebrate. But that has to be a side effect. If not, if the only thing that motivates us is a promise of wealth, then we will all end up enslaved. Some perhaps with gold shackles, but enslaved in the end. And we do not want that. We do not want to have to go through another dark age. That is why we have to promote the separation of money and state. And today, that is done by promoting peer-to-peer cash. Thank you.